Hello and welcome. This is From Upside Down to Right Side Up, Tips for the Transition. I'm Maria Tomas Keegan, your host, and this is my continuing series of conversations with strong, supportive women who have inspiring stories to tell of their own transformation, and they're courageous enough to share them with us here. On today's show, my guest is Deanna Shoss. Her story is about wanting a child, struggling to get pregnant, and grieving, giving up on her dream. What she learned from that experience prepared her for different life challenges. We call this episode Letting Go of the Outcome. Welcome, Deanna.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks so much for having me.
I am looking forward to digging into your story a bit and hearing how it changed your perspective on life. You assumed your life would go one way and had been planning for it, perhaps unconsciously. What happened that threw you off track?
I would say the moment I remember being in a restaurant in 1999, and I was out to dinner with my husband. We used to have regular Friday night date nights, and my husband looked at me and said, I can't do this anymore. It's too emotional, the ups and downs. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. At this point, we had been married for 12 years. We had actually stopped using birth control when we had moved to Chicago 5 years prior, so in 1994. And it just, for the past couple of years, we had actually realized there was potentially a problem about having a child. And at this point, he said, I just can't do it. And I knew exactly what he was talking about, because every month you would get so excited, and then your cycle would come, and it was such an emotional roller coaster. And maybe I had thought it, but he was the first to say, I can't do this anymore. And I remembered getting up from the table, saying, I'll be right back, and going into the bathroom and just staring in the mirror, realizing that, my life and my desire to have a child was completely tied to my husband, realizing that, oh my God, this means I'm not going to have children. And it wasn't just because of the decision, it's because it wasn't happening for us. And so from that moment, it was very difficult. We went from that moment, it felt like I should have had some sort of external change in my appearance. Like my skin should have changed colors, or my hair stood on end, just for people to know this is something monumental happening in our lives. At that point, my husband and I started thinking, oh, maybe we'll do other things. But before we could get to that point, it took a lot of soul searching, because at that moment, it made you have to decide how badly did you want a child. It put all these things that I just hadn't realized were there. So first was, I had been thinking we're trying to have a child, we're trying to get something that we don't have. When I realized that we wouldn't be having children, it suddenly was this really deep loss. It was really unconsciously realizing that this was something as a woman that I always just assumed would happen, and that it was my choice. And at this point, it wasn't. It was almost happening to me, and it was a loss. And I remember actually one year, I'm of Jewish faith, and on one of the Jewish holidays, they have the point where everyone goes around and says the name of someone who they've lost, someone who's died over the past year. And not even realizing I was going to do it, I stood up and said the name Leah Bonaventura, which, in my mind would have been the name of if I had a girl, of our child. So it was the idea of mourning the loss of our unborn child. Through this time period, just the story itself, you don't realize how invasive questions are. So when people would meet my husband and I, they would say, oh, how long have you been married? At this point, 14 years. Oh, why don't you have children? Or oh, you're not going to have children? And I know that it seemed so innocent, but I would get so angry. And I think there were times I would even snap at people because it became such an emotionally charged question. The other thing that would happen is people trying, I'm sure, to be well-meaning, but this idea of, oh, well, can't you adopt? Or, oh, can't you, can't you do in vitro? Or can't you do this, surrogates? There's all these things that can be done to have a baby. What it realized, and many people would never get to the depths of making a conscious idea about their philosophy around this, but it made me have to answer and justify that I didn't feel that it was right. It felt like sort of the extreme of capitalism, that if you really wanted to, you could manufacture a child. It also made you have to justify things like, well, what if we did all this work and spent all this time and then our child had a disability? What a horrible question. Because, on the other side, I'm sure a parent would say, I love my child, no matter what. But when you're on the front side of it, having to being forced to make decisions about things that really nobody should need to. And I'm reminded, this is just a story that was so poignant to me that kind of put things in perspective. Is I was taking a cab ride to a meeting one day, and the cab driver asked me the question, chit chat, how about kids? And that was one of those times where, I said, I got to tell you, I don't like that question. My husband and I, are going through an awful thing. It's a really personal question. My cab driver was a man who was probably a little bit younger than me, from Pakistan. And at that moment, he said, my wife and I are going through the same thing. He said, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I remember when we got to the destination, he asked me if I wanted a receipt for the cab ride. And I said, please, I do. And it was this moment where he looked at me, he just threw me the entire booklet of receipts. So it was like 50 receipts. And we both shared such a deep laugh, because it was the idea of the world has so much abundance, and it might not be for us right now, but that you can always find people to share that with and connect with about. So, that was really moving. And I think that what I realized, and I guess, and I'm stumbling now because there's so much between what actually happened. I mean, the full story is, what I realized is, I didn't want this to be the one thing that would stop me, that I would be, 60 or 70, or as I 80, as I got older, and this would be the one moment in my life that I couldn't get over, because the amount of depth of yearning and regret that you can have from something this big could be insurmountable. And that's when I realized that I needed a conscientious process to let go of the desire to have a child. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Were you going to ask?
Yeah. I'm mouthing wow. Because that's why we call this, right, letting go of the outcome. So help me understand how you let go of the outcome and what happened next.
What's interesting, there's a gentleman who I work with at the Department of Aviation when I used to work there, and our commissioner at the time, whenever there were flight delays, would have us operate lemonade stands. And so one day for 4 hours, I was at the lemonade stand with Pius, who, after 4 hours, you're talking about everything. And he mentioned a book to me called Conversations with God. And he mentioned the book because I was sharing the idea of what I was going through. We had 4 hours, and he said, from this book, it really talks about the idea of letting go of outcomes. And it's hard to let go of an outcome. What that really means is, I thought life was going to be one way. I was unconsciously planning or consciously planning for my life to be that way. And now, how do I let go and turn this over to the universe to allow what will be, to allow for any outcome, and to really feel within my soul and my core that outcome will be okay. So that that process actually did start with reading the book. And the reason that I mentioned pious is because when I was eventually 9 months pregnant at the airport, I would look at Pius like, Pius, this is great. And because I always felt just a little connection to him for kind of getting that ball rolling. It was through reading the book. It was through a lot of writing. It was through future planning with my husband. Mm-hmm. He actually had an opportunity through the company where he was working at the time to relocate to Italy, which the person who was unconsciously thinking of raising a child, that wouldn't have even been a possibility. I need a stable job. I need my house to be ready for this child. Well, once that's not going to happen, what I realized is it was so empowering, Maria. I realized I could actually do anything I wanted to in the world. And once I had that transformation and realized it, and then the process of sort of grieving the loss of this unborn child, I said to the universe, I realize this isn't my fate. I know that I have love in my heart to care for a child. If there's a child you need me to care for, I know that I can do it, but I accept, where I am. And what's funny, I'm smiling because about 3 days later, my sister-in-law called from Brazil, where my husband's from, and her husband, unfortunately, had passed away, and they needed help with her son, who was 12 at the time. And so he did indeed end up coming to live with us. But I remember I was laughing, thinking like my prayer was answered. I had forgotten to specify age. So what's amazing though is that 6 months after I went through this process to really say I want to live fully, I want to be fully present in my life with whatever eventuality it would be, Andre came to live with us. 6 months after that, I was actually pregnant with Luca.
Wow.
So it was amazing. And we were so positive. People always say, oh, how's the first trimester? It can be so hard. We were so positive that we couldn't have children. I actually thought I was going through menopause. I thought, well, there you go. Now I'll really never have children. That we were 3 months along before finally we said, well, maybe we should do a test. So I missed the first trimester. And then was pregnant with my son, Luca, who's now actually going to be 18 tomorrow, who's now a young man.
Wow.
Or as he tells me, a full-grown adult.
Happy birthday to the miracle baby, Luca.
Yes, yeah.
That is such a powerful story, Deanna, that I'm sure a lot of women are going to connect with. Whether it was giving up the dream of having a child or giving up some other dream that they just held on to for dear life. And it wasn't until they found the power that is behind the concept of letting go of the outcome and allowing things to happen when you relax, when you decide that you can go to Italy for this grand opportunity because you have nothing tying you here. That's when things start to happen, and they happened beautifully for you. I'm thrilled for you, and I'm so glad that you have come here to tell your story to us. So thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to hear more. You've been through a lot. You didn't even get to the other life-changing moments like your breast cancer and your back surgery. And so all of this must have been an emotional ride. And I know you've told me that figuring out, kind of cracking the code on letting go of the outcome helped you in those times as well. So I would love if you would take us on that emotional ride in our next segment and share some of that with you, how you dealt with it and how you overcame it. Would you do that with us?
Absolutely, of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I invite everyone to just stay tuned to the rest of my conversation with Deanna Shoss. Deanna told us about her dream to have a child and struggled with infertility. She also has gone through a couple of other things that she's going to talk more about today. as well her breast cancer and her back surgery. Any one of those events could derail the strongest among us. It took Deanna a bit, but she figured it out. Hello, Deanna.
Hi, Maria.
We talked a little bit about what went on with you. So I know that all of this must have taken you on a huge journey of emotions. I would love for you to tell us a bit more about that, and tell us why it is so important for you to learn to let go of the desire to have a child.
Okay. So I will tell you about my back surgery. I do, just for context, because I'm particularly proud of this. So I am also a certified body pump instructor, which is some pretty, heavy weightlifting. I teach regular fitness classes during the week. And the reason that I'm so proud of that is because I barely actually had time to recover from having the amazing baby, Luca. When he was only 3 months old, I actually ended up with a herniated disc. And it was because it turned out that I had arthritis in my spine and didn't know, and the stress of the pregnancy and birth caused a disc to herniate. My husband was in Germany. My mother-in-law was visiting from Brazil and had to be at the airport, I think at 4, the same day that I got rushed by ambulance from the physical therapy office to surgery. And it was really crazy. I couldn't walk. I could not stand up. So you talk about something really powerful and immediate where you have to let go. I had to trust that things were going to be okay. I was literally and also I would say it's also good to just nurture all of your relationships in the world, because I was at one hospital not knowing what to do, where someone in my family was able to arrange for me to get transported to a hospital that had the best back surgeon in the Chicagoland area. So I was so grateful for that. But clearly, and this is something that's so immediate that you just have no control over what the outcomes were. You just have to get through. Sometimes you have to get through the hard part. I had to get through the surgery. Like, there's no managing the surgery. That you just pray and you get through. Did that, but it was interesting just with Luca being a newborn. There was so much that could have happened. There's the bonding part when he's only 3 months old. I was fortunate. I chose to keep all of my options open, which is a big theme for me. I'm going to keep all my options open, which means I pumped and dumped breast milk while I was going through the surgery and all the medication, in the hopes that Luca would readapt to breastfeeding, which was really important. Made it through the surgery, came home. My husband came back from his trip, but I was literally on my back. We had a futon in the kitchen that it was like a couch, a day couch that we opened, and I was literally on my back for 30 days, for the first 30 days of recovery, with a 3-month-old baby. My husband's fabulous. My partner in all of this actually took 30 days off work so that he could care for me, and literally brought Luca to me every time that it was time to feed. So that was my biggest role at that point. What's interesting, so when it was time, I started physical therapy, because I also believe, Marie, that it's the idea, like, if you want to catch the bus, they always say, if you want to catch the bus, pray you'll catch the bus, but then run as fast as you possibly can. You've got to do what you need to do as well. And so when I started physical therapy, my physical therapist was wonderful, and she was working with me on things like, how can I lean over the edge of the bathtub to be able to hold Luca? How can I go from sitting to standing with Luca, with the bad back? And she was teaching me all these things, and it was really great. And I remember finally I said to her, I said, Sue, here's the thing though. This is all really fabulous, but you know what I really need to get back doing? I said, I need to get my cartwheel back. Because every year on my birthday, I always go to my front yard. I do a cartwheel, or the first day of spring. I just did one last week. I my annual cartwheel was like my rite of spring passage. And that was really important to me, was to be able to get back to do my cartwheel.
Yeah.
And it was funny. She said, I don't know about that, but the idea of the absurd, if you can do anything, why not imagine something big that you can do?
You know, that's an important message, I think, Deanna. I mean, you have such a resilience about you that it's totally inspiring to me. I do these conversations with women to inspire others, and I'm almost always the first to be inspired. So I would love to hear more about, it must have been very scary for you to suddenly be taken to the hospital and having surgery, but your approach to that was remarkable. I think that there was nothing you could do to manage it, so you just let go. It was another example of letting go, even through the fear, I'm sure. So tell us a little bit about, now, when did the breast cancer come about?
So I am now 3.5 years clear with the breast cancer. And it came about, I actually was in for my regular mammogram. And I always joke that mammograms are those things that other people have to do, that other people do. It's just the medical industrial complex, as a way to make money by forcing women to do mammograms. And so I went in for mine. I scheduled it at 8:30 and had a 10:30 business meeting with a client. And at 8:30 they came in, they did it. They said, I think something looks funny. The doctor wants to look. They kept wanting to do one more thing. And by the time it was getting close to 10, they're like, are you sure? Do you want someone to come? Do you want someone to be with you? And I remember just saying, no, I just want to leave. I want to go to my meeting. The most shocking thing, I guess, at that moment was the doctor saying to me at my regular appointment was, I need to have this biopsied. I believe that it's cancer. And I remember I asked her, I said, well, what would you say if the biopsy came out negative? And she said, I would say that the test was wrong. Like, she was so positive that I had breast cancer. And it's almost, Maria, like the same time, the night at the restaurant with my husband, where I'm looking in the mirror going, I'm not going to be a mom. I'm not going to have a child. I remember at that moment going, oh my God, I have breast cancer. I have breast cancer. And so from there, I actually literally did go to my meeting. I did have another appointment scheduled with the doctor. At this point, and I'm smiling now because I feel like it's almost like, I guess you do it enough, and maybe that's a good message there, is that the more that you become resilient and know that these are the facts and I'm going around it, the easier it gets. Because when I was with the surgeon saying, yes, it is breast cancer, yes, you do need surgery, there were two things that I did. One was, it was my mom's 80th birthday. I was scheduled to leave for Paris in like 10 days. So my first question was, okay, I have cancer, but can I go to Paris? The answer was yes. And the second one was, and I'm going to tell you maybe too much to share. You can't actually see below here, but I have been like a triple D since I was like 10. And so, getting older, I just remember when they told me that I had cancer, my first thought was, you know what? I'm going to have better boobs coming out of this than I went going in. And so because they needed to take out the lump and things wouldn't look right, I was able to do a reconstruction and a breast reduction. And if I can say this, I hope I won't regret it on camera, but I have like the best boobs I've ever had.
You can say anything you can say.
I'm making myself blush.
You know what comes out of this story for me, Deanna, is your remarkable attitude, the positivity, and not only the positivity, but the possibility that you just see things, life's going to throw stuff at you, and you have a way about you that just wants to figure it out. Because nothing's going to keep you down. I love that about you. I've said it before, I'm so inspired by you.
So Thank you.
And I love it when women come on this show and they bare their souls to help others know that they're not alone. So I want to thank you, Deanna, for bearing yours.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. So let's talk about, in our next segment, let's talk about what you've learned from all of this. I know you're going to have some really great words of wisdom. So will you come back and tell us that?
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Perfect. So stay tuned, everyone, again, for the continuing conversation I'm going to have with Deanna Shoss. Hello, Deanna.
Hi, Maria.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being so transparent and vulnerable and uplifting. This segment is about the lessons you learned and the wisdom you've acquired, and I'd love for you to share it with others. So are you ready to do that?
I am ready.
All right, share away, share some tips.
Sure. So I have a phrase that actually I made up, but it's my favorite saying, which says, resilience runs in my family. My mom died once, and even that didn't kill her. And that actually goes from my mom literally was in the hospital and literally died and was resuscitated. And that was in 1987. So beyond anything that could have been expected. So I love that legacy of resilience. I will say, though, that life teaches you resilience. So we started with the story of the infertility that my husband and I faced and realized that letting go of outcomes was so important at that moment to realize that there's not just one path that you can take. There are many paths, and they are what you make them. So letting go of a specific outcome that you can't control to open yourself up to other outcomes is really important.
That is so powerful. You're so right. When we let go and go with the flow, it opens us up, right, to the possibilities, especially when we approach it in a positive way like you do. So thank you for sharing that one. That's a very important message to deliver. What else, Deanna?
What I also realize is that the process of letting go, or the process of change is what I would call it. That's a really specific change that you have to make in your life. And that the process of change sometimes can feel done, but it's actually not. And what I will get at with that is after going through the process of accepting that we weren't going to have a child and that we were open to other things, what I realized was that how much the idea of fertility and having a baby was tied to my idea of sensuality as a woman. And so even though mentally I had gone through this process of change and open to outcomes, what I realized is I wasn't feeling vibrant and sexy. And the idea of creative, sometimes people say when you create a child, it's the idea of creativity surging through your body. And so I thought that I was through the change, but I needed to go a little bit farther. I needed to go further to synthesize it, not just intellectually where I understand what's going on and I'm open to possibilities, but actually to synthesize it into my being as my new unconscious train of thought, that I can be a vibrant, sexy, beautiful woman, even without that idea of fertility, which has long been so tied to women's essence.
So you're talking about, I love that you said this, that you might think you're done, but you're often not, and there's more to be done. And a lot of that has to do with how you integrate it's like the new belief, right? Mm-hmm. And how you integrate that mindfully into your heart and soul, and you said into your being, so that you can step back out and show up the way you really want to be, which was vibrant and sexy, mm-hmm. and kind of that whole person again, right?
Yes. Yeah. And Maria, what I would say, the third lesson of all of that, of having realized that, because that was unconscious when I realized like I still had more to go, I would say that resilience, though, is a practice. It's a practice that gets better the more you do it. And what I mean by that is you start with needing to be resilient because of life happening, realizing that, okay, I can start with what I physically do with my surroundings, but I need to go deeper to make sure that I've synthesized that change. But the final stage of it is when you get accustomed to being resilient, and when looking for opportunity and outcomes becomes a practice, that you start to see it everywhere. That you start to realize that why not? You know, it's that idea of, well, why not me? Why don't I do that? Why not take advantage of this opportunity? And what I find is in the past, where maybe I might have been quiet, although I don't know if I've ever actually been accused of being quiet, but you know, sometimes we're afraid to step up and say, well, I'll volunteer, I'll do it, because I don't know what the outcome will be. Once you're used to the practice of resilience and you know that there's multiple outcomes and multiple possibilities for you, why not try a bunch of things and see which one happens? And with that attitude, you can just try so many more things. I'll tell you what I think about sometimes. I don't remember this person's name, but I swear they're my hero. In college, in one of the dorm rooms, there was a young man who had decorated the wall of his dorm room with all of the rejection letters from jobs he had applied for. They were, back then, it was like pale yellows or teals or, you know, gray. So it was a really beautiful thing, but it pretty much covered his entire wall. And some people might look at that and say, oh man, nobody wants him. Look at all those rejections. I got to tell you, I have absolutely positively no doubt that that person is like flying high somewhere now, because the more that you put yourself out there and the more that you're able to pick up and move on when, you know, maybe when there is a disappointment, just the more is more. The more you'll get and the more opportunity that you'll continue to see and the universe will send to you.
I believe you are right on, right there. And it's hard to do. It's hard for a lot of people to put themselves out and not recoil from the rejection. I love what you said. Resilience is a practice. You're so right there too. When we practice being resilient and bouncing back from whatever the adversity, and it can be really tough stuff in life. But when we take a different attitude, right? When we switch up the way we think about something and we look at it not through the lens of rejection or being stopped or stuck, but through the lens of possibility, and it allows us to just open up and do exactly what you said. Why not? Why can't I do that? Why can't I take that risk, step outside my comfort zone and be fine, no matter the outcome? Because I know I can bounce back if it doesn't work, and then I can go try something else. I love that. That is a powerful tip.
Actually, it's so funny when you say things out loud, hearing yourself say it, sometimes you don't always even realize how much you feel it or what you have inside you until you're able to articulate that out loud. It's almost, I feel like an objective observer with everyone going like, yeah, that's really, I like it. I'm going to do that.
That's so, thank you so much for those tips, those nuggets of wisdom, as I like to call them. I know they're going to resonate with a lot of women out there, and a lot of women are going to go, oh, I can't do that. But I'm here to tell you, you can. You can. Deanna is the role model for that. And I'm sure that some women are going to want to reach out to you directly. So would you share us the best way for them to do that?
The best way, because you can get my email, my phone number, everything there, is to go to my website, which is interculturaltalk.com.
Perfect. That's great, and it's a very interesting website for those of you. When you go there, just explore it. There's a lot of great stuff there. So I want to thank you, Deanna, for being here with us. I am truly inspired by your resilience and your courage to let go, so that you are more open to receive more.
Thank you.
The abundance in this world is just amazing, and you've shared a great message with us. And I want to thank all of you for watching this episode with Deanna Shoss. This series of conversations is inspired by my latest book, Upside Down to Right Side Up, Turning Transition into Triumph. My book, the articles I write, and these conversations are intended to share stories from the heart and life strategies that can help others. I invite you to share them with the women you know who could benefit from hearing these kinds of stories, so that none of us ever feels like we are alone. Many of us have gone through similar experiences, and we're here to help. I believe it's our time to thrive. Would you join me on that ride? I'm Maria Tomas Keegan. Till next time.